The massive space station called Harmony's Edge floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal city. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at its many ports. Ambassador Lee Tae-ho pressed his face to the window of the human transport ship and watched the station grow larger as they approached. "Sir, we'll be docking in 10 minutes, said Park Ji-won, his young aide. She clutched a tablet filled with notes and documents. Her hands shook slightly. Lee Tae-ho turned away from the window. He was a tall man in his 50s with gray hair and calm eyes. He had been Earth's top diplomat for 20 years. He had seen many difficult situations, but this one felt different. "Are you nervous, Ji-won?" he asked. "Yes, sir. This is the Galactic Council. They could ban us from ever leaving our solar system." Lee nodded slowly. The message had arrived 3 weeks ago. The Galactic Council, which ruled most of the galaxy, was putting humanity on trial. They said humans were too violent and dangerous. They said humans were spreading like a disease across the stars. The ship docked with a soft thud. Lee straightened his dark blue diplomatic uniform. "Remember, Ji-won, we are here to speak for all of humanity. Stay calm and watch everything." They walked through the docking tube into the station. The first thing Lee noticed was how huge everything was. The ceiling stretched high above them, designed for aliens much taller than humans. Strange creatures walked past them in the corridors. Some looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the light. Others moved on tentacles instead of legs. A few looked almost human, but had blue skin and extra arms. "This way, human," said a voice. Lee turned to see a tall crystal being. It sparkled with purple and gold light. "I am Veltar Kemnos. I will take you to your rooms." They followed the crystal alien through long hallways. Other aliens stopped to stare at them. Lee heard whispers, in languages he didn't understand, but the tone was clear. The aliens didn't like humans being here. Their rooms were small and plain. Lee had stayed in prison cells that were more comfortable. There was a bed, a desk, and a small window that looked out at space. "The trial begins tomorrow," said Veltar Kemnos. "You will present your case to the full council. I suggest you use the time wisely." After the alien left, Ji-won sat on her bed and opened her tablet. "Sir, I've prepared our defense. We can talk about human medicine and how we've helped sick planets. We can mention our art and music. We can show them peaceful human colonies." Lee walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, 37 light-years away. Somewhere out there were the 17 human colonies that the council wanted to shut down. "What do you think they really want, Ji-won?" "I think they want us to promise to behave, to follow their rules." Lee was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe. Or maybe they want something else." The next morning came quickly. Lee put on his best uniform and checked his appearance in the mirror. He had to look perfect. Today he would speak for 12 billion humans spread across 18 worlds. The council chamber was the most amazing room Lee had ever seen. It was shaped like a giant bowl with seats rising up on all sides. Thousands of aliens filled the seats. At the bottom of the bowl was a small platform with a microphone. "The human delegation will sit there," said their guide, pointing to a few chairs near the platform. They were the only chairs designed for human-sized bodies. Lee looked around the chamber. The crystal aliens called Veltari sat in the highest seats. They seemed to be in charge. Below them were the Morphians, who lived in water and had to stay in special tanks. The insect-like Ketron clicked their claws together when they saw the humans arrive. A deep voice filled the chamber. "The council will come to order." A huge Veltari at the top of the chamber stood up. Its crystal body was bigger than the others and glowed with white light. "I am Council Prime Veltar Zethmos. We gather today to judge the humans." The chamber fell silent. Lee could feel thousands of alien eyes watching him. "The charges are serious," continued Zethmos. "The humans have spread across 17 star systems in only 200 years. They fight wars with each other. They take resources from planets without asking permission from the council. They are violent and dangerous." A Morphian in a water tank spoke next. Its voice bubbled through the water. "Humans destroyed 3 cities on their own planet just 50 years ago. They use weapons that can crack continents. They are a threat to peaceful species everywhere. One by one, aliens stood up to speak against humanity. They told stories of human ships arriving at their worlds. They talked about human colonies being built too close to their territory. They said humans were loud, messy, and impossible to control. Lee listened to every word. Jiwan took notes on her tablet, her face growing paler with each accusation. A Ketron clicked its claws loudly. Humans are like a disease. They multiply too fast. They consume everything. They must be stopped before they spread further. Yes, agreed a tall alien with blue skin. They refuse to follow council law. They make their own rules. This cannot be allowed. The accusations went on for hours. Lee never changed his expression. He sat calmly with his hands folded, watching and listening. Finally, Council Prime Zethmos spoke again. These are the charges against humanity. The evidence is clear. Humans are a danger to the peace and order of the galaxy. The crystal being's light grew brighter. However, the council is fair. We will give the humans a chance to defend themselves. Ambassador Lee Tae-ho, you have 7 solar days to prepare your case. If you cannot prove that humanity deserves to remain free, we will confine all humans to their home system forever. The chamber erupted in clicking, bubbling, and strange alien sounds that might have been cheering. Lee stood up slowly. Thank you, Council Prime, we will be ready. As they left the chamber, Jiwan whispered, Sir, did you hear what they said? They want to trap us in our own solar system like animals in a cage. Lee nodded. Yes, I heard. But I also heard something else. What? They're afraid of us, Jiwan. The question is, what are they really afraid of? Back in their small room, Lee stared out at the stars again. 7 days to save humanity's future. 7 days to find the right words. 7 days to discover what the Galactic Council was really trying to hide. He had work to do. Park Ji-won could not sleep. She walked back and forth in their small room, reading from her tablet. The words on the screen blurred together as she tried to find something, anything, that might save humanity. Sir, I have a list of all the good things humans have done, she said to Lee Tae-ho, who sat quietly at the desk. We've cured diseases on 6 different worlds. We've shared our technology freely. We've never conquered anyone. Lee did not look up from the papers in front of him. That's good, Ji-won. Keep working on that. We could talk about human art, or our music. Aliens love human music. Or maybe our food. Everyone likes human food. Yes, Lee said softly, but his mind seemed far away. Ji-won stopped walking. Sir, are you listening to me? Lee finally looked up. His eyes were tired but thoughtful. I'm listening, but I'm also thinking about my grandfather. Your grandfather? Lee leaned back in his chair. His name was Lee Dong-min. He fought in the resource wars on Earth 60 years ago. Terrible fighting. Millions died over water and clean air. Lee's voice grew quiet. He used to tell me stories about the war. Not about the battles, but about the small things. How soldiers would share their last meal with wounded enemies. How they would risk their lives to save civilians from bombing. Ji-won sat down on her bed. She had heard stories about the old Earth wars, but they seemed like ancient history to someone her age. My grandfather said something I never forgot, Lee continued. He said humans don't fight because they're evil. They fight because they care about something. Their families, their homes, their ideas about what's right. But the Council sees our wars as proof that we're dangerous. Maybe. Or maybe they see something else. Lee stood up and walked to the window. My father, Lee Sang-ho, was a refugee after the wars. He lost everything, his home, his job, his friends. But he didn't give up. He built a new life. He married my mother. He had children. He planted trees in the wasteland where his old city used to be. Lee turned back to Ji-won. That's what humans do. We don't just survive. We rebuild. We grow. We try again. A knock at the door interrupted them. Come in, Lee called. The door opened and a man in a black uniform entered. He was tall and muscular with short hair and sharp eyes. Ambassador, I'm Kim Do-hyun from Intelligence. I have information you need to see. Kim Do-hyun sat down and pulled out a small device. It projected a hologram in the air between them. The image showed a map of the galaxy with different colored dots. I've been investigating the council members for the past 3 days, Kim said. What I found is interesting. Each of these species has committed acts that are much worse than anything humans have done. He pointed to blue dots on the map. The Morpheans. 300 years ago, they destroyed 3 entire species in what they called the Great Cleansing. They decided these species were impure and killed every single one of them. Ji-won's eyes widened. But they called us violent. It gets worse, Kim continued. He pointed to red dots. The Ketron still practice ritual warfare on their colony worlds. They force weaker species to fight each other for entertainment. And the Veltari... He paused. The Veltari have been the real rulers of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They've destroyed any species that grew too powerful or too smart. Lee studied the hologram carefully. How did you find this information? It's all in their own records, hidden in old databases but not deleted. I think they got careless because no one ever challenged them before. Another knock at the door. This time a woman entered. She wore the blue uniform of a scientist. Ambassador, I'm Dr. Choi Min-ah, the expedition's biologist. I've been studying the other species here. Dr. Choi set down her tablet and showed them pictures of different aliens. The council claims they represent a peaceful galactic civilization. But look at this. She pointed to an image of a Veltari. See those crystal formations on their bodies? Those are weapons. They can fire energy beams that can cut through steel. Every adult Veltari is basically a walking war machine. She scrolled to another image. The Morpheans have poison glands. They can kill with a touch. The Ketron have natural armor and claws that can slice through metal. What's your point? Ji-won asked. My point is that every single council species is naturally built for war. But humans, we're soft. We're slow. We have no natural weapons at all. If anyone should be afraid, it should be us. Lee sat down slowly as the pieces began to fit together in his mind. They're not afraid of our violence. They're afraid of something else. Kim Do-hyun nodded. I think they're afraid of our growth. Look at the timeline. 200 years ago, humans could barely travel to our own moon. Now we have 17 colonies and we're still expanding. No other species has ever developed that fast. Dr. Choi added, and it's not just technology, it's ideas. I've talked to some of the younger aliens here. Many of them are curious about human concepts like democracy, individual rights, and artistic freedom. The council species don't have any of these things. Lee was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, stronger. They're not putting us on trial because we're dangerous. They're putting us on trial because we're different, because we won't follow their rules. What do we do? Ji-won asked. Lee walked back to the window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere, out there, human families were living their lives, building homes, raising children, dreaming of the future. They had no idea that their freedom hung in the balance. We tell the truth, Lee said finally, but not the truth they expect. Over the next few days, the team worked together. Kim Do-hyun brought more intelligence about the council's hidden history. Dr. Choi Min-ah studied the behavior and biology of different alien species. Ji-won organized all the information into clear, simple facts. And Lee Tae-ho sat at his desk, writing. Not a defense of humanity's actions, but something much more dangerous. A challenge to everything the Galactic Council stood for. On the night before the trial, Lee called his team together. Tomorrow, I'm not going to apologize for being human, he said. I'm not going to promise that we'll behave better. Instead, I'm going to ask them a simple question. What question? Ji-won asked. Lee smiled for the first time since they had arrived. I'm going to ask them what they're really afraid of. And then I'm going to tell them why they should be. Outside their window, the stars continued to shine. Somewhere among those stars, 17 human colonies waited to learn their fate. Tomorrow, one man's words would determine whether humanity would remain free or become prisoners in their own solar system. Lee Tae-ho was ready to speak for all of them. The morning of the 5th day brought an unexpected visitor. Lee Tae-ho was reviewing his notes when the door chimed. A woman in a military uniform entered. She was tall, with short black hair, and carried herself like a soldier. "Ambassador, I'm Commander Han Soo-jin from the ship Determination," she said with a sharp salute. "I have news from the outer colonies." Lee gestured for her to sit down. Park Ji-won and the rest of the team gathered around as Commander Han opened her briefcase. "Sir, 3 colonies have reported strange visits in the past month," Han began. "Ships claiming to be Council peacekeepers have been asking questions about human military strength and population numbers." Kim Do-hyun leaned forward. "What kind of questions? How many weapons we have, how fast our ships are, how quickly we could evacuate if necessary." Commander Han's expression was grim. "But that's not the strangest part. We also received secret messages from representatives of smaller, alien species." She pulled out a communication device. "The Thylorians from the Outer Rim sent this message. They want to know if humans would be willing to protect their colonies from Council enforcement actions." Dr. Choi Min-ah looked puzzled. "Why would they need protection? I thought the Council maintained peace." "That's what we thought too, Commander," Han replied. "But according to these messages, the Council's peacekeeping isn't as peaceful as they claim. The Thylorians say Council ships have been forcing them to limit their population growth and technology development." Lee absorbed this information quietly. "How many species have contacted us?" 7 so far. All small, all afraid to speak openly. They say the Council has rules about how fast a species can develop, how many worlds they can colonize, even what kind of technology they're allowed to research. Ji-won looked up from her notes. "That doesn't sound like peace, that sounds like control." A soft knock interrupted them. Everyone turned as the door slid open. A young alien entered, looking nervous. It was about the size of a human child, but clearly adult. Its insect-like body was covered in green and brown plates, and it had 4 arms and large compound eyes. "Excuse me," the alien said in careful English. "I am Thexar of the Ketran. I wish to speak with the humans." Room fell silent. Commander Han's hand moved toward her weapon, but Lee raised his hand to stop her. "Please come in," Lee said calmly. "We're honored by your visit." Thexar stepped inside, all 4 arms fidgeting nervously. "I should not be here. If my elders knew, there would be punishment. But I had to meet you." "Why?" Ji-won asked gently. "Because I have been studying your species for 3 years. Your art, your stories, your music. You are not what the Council says you are." Dr. Choi Min-ah moved slowly toward the alien. "What do you think we are?" Thexar's compound eyes seemed to shine. "You are free. When a human makes art, it is different from what any other human makes. When you tell stories, they are about individuals who choose their own path. When you sing, each voice is unique." The young alien paused, gathering courage. "In Ketran society, all art follows the same patterns. All stories teach the same lessons. All songs sound the same. We are taught that this is proper, that harmony comes from similarity." "But you don't believe that?" Lee asked. "I have heard human music, Ambassador. I have seen your paintings and read your stories. There is beauty in difference. There is strength in choice." Thexar's voice grew stronger. "And I am not the only one who thinks this." Kim Do-hyun leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "There are others, young ones from many species. We talk in secret about human ideas. Freedom to choose your job, freedom to travel between worlds, freedom to think new thoughts." Thexar paused. "The Council calls these ideas dangerous. They say such freedom leads to chaos and war." Commander Han spoke carefully. "But you don't agree?" "I look at human colonies, Commander. Yes, sometimes there are arguments and disagreements, but I also see humans from different worlds working together on projects no single world could complete. I see humans helping species they just met. I see humans who choose to be doctors or teachers or artists because they want to, not because they were assigned those roles. Lee stood up and walked to the window. Thexar, if you could choose any life for yourself, what would you choose? Young alien was quiet for a long moment. I would choose to travel between worlds and learn about different species. I would write stories about what I discovered. I would help young beings from all species learn about each other. And what does the council say you should do with your life? I am assigned to be a harmony monitor. I will spend my life making sure other Ketron follow the old ways and don't learn dangerous ideas from outsiders. The room was quiet, as everyone understood the weight of this confession. Dr. Choi Min-ah broke the silence. How many young aliens feel like you do? More than the council knows. We have secret communication networks. We share human art and stories. We discuss ideas about individual freedom and choice. Thexar looked directly at Lee. Ambassador, if humanity is judged harshly by the council, what happens to those ideas? Lee turned back to the group. They disappear. The council makes sure of that. Kim Do-hyun was typing rapidly on his device. I'm getting reports from our other intelligence sources. There are underground movements on 17 council worlds. Young aliens questioning their governments, asking for more freedom, demanding the right to make choices about their own lives. Commander Han stood up. Sir, I think we're looking at this trial all wrong. This isn't just about humanity's right to exist. This is about something much bigger. What do you mean? Ji-won asked. I mean, we're not the only ones on trial here. Every alien who wants freedom, who wants choice, who wants the right to be different, they're all on trial too. Lee nodded, slowly. The council isn't just afraid of human expansion or human technology. They're afraid of human ideas spreading to other species. Thexar clicked his claws together nervously. Ambassador, there is something else you should know. The young ones have been watching your preparations for the trial. Word is spreading through our secret networks. What kind of word? That for the first time in 10,000 years, someone is going to challenge the council directly. Not asking for mercy or making promises to behave, but actually challenging their right to control the galaxy. Dr. Choi Min-ah looked amazed. They're all waiting to see what happens. Yes, Thexar agreed. If humanity stands up to the council and wins, it will prove that change is possible. But if humanity is defeated, the alien's voice trailed off. Then the idea of freedom dies with us, Lee finished. Commander Han gathered her materials. Sir, I need to return to my ship and coordinate with the other human vessels in this system. But I want you to know, whatever you say in that council chamber tomorrow, you won't be speaking just for humanity. After the others left, Lee sat alone with his thoughts. Through the window, he could see alien ships from dozens of worlds docked at the station. He wondered how many of those ships carried young beings like Thexar, beings who dreamed of something more than the life the council had planned for them. Ji-won entered the room quietly. Sir, your speech is ready? Lee looked at the papers on his desk. Hours of careful work, preparing humanity's defense. Now he realized he needed something completely different. No, he said, gathering up his notes. We need to start over. Start over? Sir, the trial is tomorrow. Lee smiled and picked up a fresh sheet of paper. Then we'd better work fast. Because I'm not just going to defend humanity anymore, Ji-won. I'm going to set the galaxy free. The council chamber was packed. Every seat was filled with aliens from across the galaxy. Lee Tae-ho walked slowly to the speaking platform at the center of the huge room. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Park Ji-won sat in the front row with their team. Her heart pounded as she watched her mentor take his place behind the microphone. Everything they had worked for came down to this moment. Council Prime Veltar Zethmos spoke from his high seat. Ambassador Lee Tae-ho, you will now present humanity's defense against the charges. The council will listen, then make its judgment. Lee looked around the chamber. Thousands of alien faces stared down at him. Some looked curious, others angry, most simply bored. They expected him to beg for mercy. Instead, Lee asked a simple question. What is peace? His voice carried clearly through the chamber. Several aliens shifted in their seats, surprised by the question. The Council says it maintains peace across the galaxy, Lee continued. But I wonder if we all mean the same thing when we use that word. He pressed a button on the podium. A holographic display appeared in the air above him, showing images of different worlds. These are human colonies, Lee said. New Sol on Proxima 5, New Busan on Kepler Station, 17 worlds where humans have built new homes. The images showed busy cities, green farms, and children playing in parks. The Council says these colonies prove humans are dangerous. I say they prove something else entirely. Lee pointed to an image of humans and aliens working together in a laboratory. This is a medical research station on Titan Colony. Humans and Thylorians working together to cure a disease that affects both species. The Council never asked them to do this work. They chose to do it. A Morphean in a water tank bubbled angrily. This proves nothing. Humans expand too quickly. They take resources without permission. Lee nodded calmly. You're right. Humans do expand quickly. But let me ask you something. He pressed another button. The display changed to show historical records. How long did it take the Morphean Empire to expand across 12 star systems? The chamber fell silent. The historical data floated in the air for all to see. 800 years, Lee answered his own question. And during that expansion, how many native species did the Morpheans encounter? More data appeared. The Morphean representative tried to object, but Lee continued, 15 species, where are they now? Lee's voice grew stronger. Gone, every single one, eliminated during your great cleansing 3 centuries ago. Angry sounds came from the Morphean section. Lee turned to face them directly. You call us dangerous because we expand in 200 years instead of 800. But in all our expansion, how many species have humans eliminated? He paused. 0, not 1. He turned to address the Ketron section. The insectoid representatives have called humans primitive and violent. Let me show you something primitive and violent. The display changed again. This time it showed footage from Ketron colony worlds. Aliens forced to fight each other while others watched for entertainment. This happens every week on 12 Ketron worlds, Lee said calmly. Species captured and forced to fight to the death for sport. When humans fight, we fight for our families, our homes, our freedom. When Ketron fight, it's for entertainment. The Ketron section erupted in angry clicking sounds. Their representative stood up, claws extended. You dare accuse us? We maintain order through strength. Yes, Lee agreed. Order through strength, peace through fear, control through violence. He looked around the chamber. Is that the peace you're so proud of? Council Prime Zethmos tried to restore order. Ambassador, you will limit your remarks to defending human actions. Lee turned to face the highest seats where the Veltari sat. Very well. Let me defend human actions by comparing them to Veltari actions. The chamber went deadly quiet. No, one challenged the Veltari directly. Lee pressed another button. Ancient records appeared in the display. 10,000 years ago, the Veltari were a young species much like humans today. They expanded rapidly, developed new technology, spread across many worlds. The images showed early Veltari history, wars, conquest, the destruction of other civilizations. The difference is what happened next, Lee continued. When the Veltari became powerful enough, they made a choice. They decided that no other species would ever be allowed to grow as they had grown. More images appeared. Records of species eliminated, worlds sterilized, entire civilizations erased from history. For 10,000 years, whenever a species showed rapid development, the Veltari found reasons to destroy them. Sometimes they called it maintaining peace. Sometimes they called it protecting galactic order. But the result was always the same. Lee's voice filled the chamber. The Veltari created peace by making sure no one could ever challenge their power. Veltar Zethmos rose from his seat, his crystal body blazing with angry light. Enough. These accusations are true? Lee interrupted. Yes, they are, and I can prove it. Kim Do-hyun activated his equipment. Suddenly the chamber filled with data streams, historical records, and communication logs. All of it came from the Council's own databases. Intelligence Officer Kim Do-hyun has been busy, Lee said. Every piece of evidence comes from your own records, hidden but not destroyed. I suppose after 10,000 years you got careless. The evidence was overwhelming. Species after species eliminated for the crime of rapid development. Worlds quarantined until their populations died out. Technologies suppressed to prevent advancement. This is what the Council calls peace, Lee said. A galaxy where no one is allowed to grow, to change, to dream of something better. He walked closer to the alien seats. But humans don't follow your rules. We expand quickly because we're excited about the future. We develop new technology because we love to solve problems. We welcome other species to work with us because we believe in cooperation, not domination. Park Ji-won activated the next part of their presentation. The display showed messages from dozens of species, all the secret communications asking for human protection. These are not the communications of species who fear humans, Lee said. These are the communications of species who hope humans can protect them from you. The chamber erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted in dozens of languages. Some tried to leave their seats. Council security moved to restore order. Lee raised his voice above the noise. You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It's not our weapons or our expansion or our technology. The chamber slowly grew quiet as aliens strained to hear his words. What makes us dangerous is that we believe in tomorrow. We believe things can get better. We believe individuals should be free to choose their own paths. Lee's voice grew passionate. And worst of all, from your point of view, we teach these ideas to everyone we meet. He gestured toward the alien seats. Your own young people are already learning human ideas. They want to choose their own careers, explore new worlds, create art that expresses their individual thoughts. Texar, sitting in a small section reserved for junior diplomatic staff, stood up suddenly. It's true, he called out in his high voice. Many of us want the freedom to choose. Other young aliens began to stand. First one, then dozens, then hundreds, all calling out their support for human ideas about freedom and choice. The older aliens looked shocked. They had no idea how far these dangerous human concepts had already spread. Lee smiled as he delivered his final words. You're right to fear us, not because we'll conquer you with weapons, but because we'll conquer your young people with hope. The chamber fell silent. The question isn't whether humans are dangerous, Lee concluded. The question is whether you're brave enough to let the galaxy choose its own future. He stepped away from the microphone and walked calmly back to his seat. Behind him, the Council struggled to maintain order as their carefully controlled galaxy began to crack apart. The Council chamber had never seen chaos like this. Half the alien representatives were on their feet shouting in dozens of languages. Others sat in stunned silence processing what they had just heard. Security guards moved through the aisles, trying to restore order. Council Prime Veltar Zethmos blazed with white-hot light as he attempted to regain control. Order. The Council demands order. Lee Tae-ho sat calmly in his chair, watching the storm he had created. Park Ji-won leaned over and whispered, Sir, what happens now? Before Lee could answer, Texar jumped onto his seat and called out in his high voice, The young ones of Ketran stand with humanity. His compound eyes gleamed as he looked around the chamber. We choose freedom. His words seemed to break. A dam. Young aliens throughout the chamber began standing and shouting their support. A group of young Thylorians in the upper sections chanted, Freedom to choose, freedom to grow. A tall Morphean youngling somehow climbed out of his water tank and called out, We want the right to explore. We want the right to create. Water dripped from his blue skin as security guards tried to force him back into his tank. Veltar Zethmos's light grew brighter and more angry. Silence. These younglings speak without authority. Their words mean nothing. But the rebellion was spreading. Representatives from smaller species began standing as well. The Thylorian ambassador rose from her seat and spoke in careful English. The Thylorian worlds formally request human protection from Council enforcement. More voices joined her. The Zendari colonies ask for human alliance. The Outer Rim worlds choose freedom. We stand with humanity, Dr. Choi Minna counted quickly. At least 30 species have declared support, she whispered to her teammates. Maybe more. The older, more powerful aliens looked horrified. A senior Morphean bubbled angrily in his tank. This is rebellion, this is chaos. The humans have poisoned your minds with their dangerous ideas. A young Morphean at the edge of the water section replied, They didn't poison our minds. They opened them. Kim Do-hyun was monitoring his communication devices. Sir, I'm getting reports from across the galaxy. Human colonies are receiving formal requests for alliance from over 50 worlds. And he paused, checking his screen. Commander Han is requesting permission to enter the chamber. Lee nodded. Tell her to come in. The chamber doors opened and Commander Han Soo-jin entered, followed by a line of beings that made everyone stop shouting. Behind her walked captains and ambassadors from dozens of species, all the ones that had secretly contacted humanity for help. Council Prime, Commander Han called out clearly. I bring formal diplomatic communications from 17 species requesting protection under human authority. She walked to the center of the chamber and placed a stack of documents on the podium. These are signed treaties, legal under galactic law. These worlds choose to leave council authority and join a new alliance with humanity. The silence that followed was deafening. Veltar Zethmos stared at the documents as if they were explosive devices. This is impossible, he stammered. The council has maintained order for 10,000 years. You cannot simply, choose to leave. Lee stood up slowly. Actually, they can. I've read galactic law very carefully. Any species can withdraw from council authority with proper notice. These documents provide that notice. A Ketron elder clicked his claws furiously. If you think we'll allow this rebellion, you're mistaken. The council has fleets. We have weapons. We can force compliance. Commander Han smiled coldly. You can try. She pressed a button on her communicator. The chamber's main display screen activated, showing the space around Harmony's Edge station. What everyone saw made them gasp. Ships, hundreds of them. Human, vessels mixed with ships from dozens of other worlds, all surrounding the council station in a massive show of force. The Free Worlds Alliance Fleet, Commander Han announced. 37 species, over 800 ships, all sworn to protect each other from council aggression. Lee walked back to the podium. You taught us well about peace through strength. Council Prime, we're simply better at it than you are. Veltar Zethmos' light flickered with what might have been fear. You cannot threaten the council. We have ruled for 10,000 years. And that rule is ending, Lee replied calmly. Not because we're destroying you, but because people are choosing something better. Park Ji-won activated the next part of their presentation. The display showed real-time communications from across the galaxy, world after world announcing their withdrawal from council authority. 83 worlds have declared independence in the past hour, she reported. More are joining every minute. The older council members looked around in panic. Their carefully controlled galaxy was falling apart before their eyes. A senior Veltari stood up, his crystal form dim with defeat. What do you want from us? Lee's voice was surprisingly gentle. Nothing. You can keep ruling the worlds that choose to stay with you. You can maintain your version of peace for those who want it, but you can't force it on others anymore. And if we refuse, if we fight, Commander, Han stepped forward, then you'll lose. Your fleets are powerful, but they're also old, built for controlling weak colonies, not fighting determined allies. She gestured toward the display showing the Free World's fleet. These are people fighting for their freedom. That makes them very dangerous. Dexar called out from his seat. The young Ketron will not fight against our friends. We choose peace with humanity. Similar calls came from young aliens throughout the chamber. The council's own representatives were splitting apart as the younger generation chose sides. Veltar Zethmos looked around the chamber at the chaos. The rebellion, the collapse of everything his people had built. Finally, he spoke in a voice drained of its former authority. The Council will need time to consider these developments. Lee nodded. Of course, take all the time you need, but understand this. The galaxy has already chosen. With or without Council approval, the Free Worlds Alliance will continue to grow. He gathered his papers and prepared to leave the podium. Oh, and Council Prime. Thank you. Thank you? For what? Lee smiled. For proving my point. When you threatened us with force just now, you showed everyone exactly what kind of peace the Council really offers. Peace through fear, order through oppression. He looked around the chamber. Now they've seen an alternative. As Lee walked away from the podium, the chamber erupted again. But this time it wasn't chaos. It was celebration. Young aliens cheered and sang. Representatives from free worlds embraced each other. The sound of hope filled the ancient chamber. 6 months later, Lee Tae-ho sat in his new office aboard Freedom Station, the headquarters of the Free Worlds Alliance. Through his window, he could see ships from over 200 species working together, trading, exploring, building a new kind of galactic civilization. Park Ji-won entered with a report. Sir, 3 more worlds have requested to join the Alliance, and the Council has officially recognized our independence. Lee smiled. How many Council worlds are left? About 40% of their original territory. Still substantial, but no longer dominant. Ji-won paused. Thexar sends his greetings, by the way. He's leading a cultural exchange program between 12 species. Says he's finally living the life he always dreamed of. Lee nodded, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, beings who had never dreamed of freedom were now choosing their own paths. Artists were creating works that no committee had approved. Scientists were exploring ideas that no authority had permitted. Children were growing up believing they could become anything they wanted. What are you thinking about, sir? Ji-won asked. Lee remembered his grandfather's words about humans fighting for what they cared about. He remembered his father rebuilding after losing everything. He remembered standing in that council chamber, facing the fear and anger of beings who couldn't imagine a galaxy where people chose their own destiny. I'm thinking about tomorrow, Lee said, and how it's going to be better than today. Outside, the window, the ships of the Free Worlds Alliance sailed toward the stars, carrying hope and freedom to every corner of the galaxy. The future had finally begun.